Hello there, heroes! I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Kamen Rider Dragon Knight episode review. Last time, we had a whole bunch of talking and a little bit of fighting. Xaviax made a direct offer to Kit to save his dad if he vents Wing Knight, and Michelle Walsh started to make her move to bring Kit into the government. Let's hope for
a little less talk and a lot more action
as we take a gander at the 25th episode of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, Dropping the Axe.
Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, and make sure you got your notifications set up by hitting that little bell icon. Right you.
What he said was, you can consider checking us out on Patreon or Ko-fi at Orange Ranger Videos.
Right you.
We open with Wing Knight taking on a couple of gel newts, and apparently this fight has been going on for a while, as Len is very clearly exhausted. Kit peeks around a corner, transformed as Dragon Knight, and hearing an audible flashback of himself telling Xaviax that he knows his price is venting Wing Knight. The Bat Rider finishes off the two grunts and turns exhausted. Kit then attacks him, kicking him in the back and starting a fight. Len asks him what in the world he's doing, and Kit says that he is going to save his father. Len says that there might be a way to do that after they defeat Xaviax, but Kit says he's not going to rely on a maybe. Tossing Wing Knight aside, Kit's deck transforms into the Dark Rider's deck, and he goes through a re-transformation sequence into the Dark Rider. After this point, the fight is an absolute mismatch. Wing Knight just getting beaten around. Kit activates his final vent, which is just a palette-swapped version of the original Dragon Knight final vent, and successfully vents Wing Knight. 1 down, 1 to go, he says ominously, even though Xaviax never said anything about venting Siren. Then we get the opening sequence. Wow, they haven't pulled the dream card yet. Could this be real? After the theme song, Kit, still can't give that Dark Rider a name, goes after Siren. And this fight is brutal. Siren gets beaten around too, and when she jumps at Kit, he activates his attack vent. Drag Blacker comes and grabs Siren in its mouth, plowing her down through cement into some underground tunnels, and then dragging her through pillars head first. Ouch. She's brought back to Kit with her wing-like cape shredded, a really nice visual touch. He uses his strike vent, but right as Siren is about to be taken out, Kit wakes up from the dream!
No! No!
I knew this was a dream sequence from the start, and I was still frustrated watching it now. This brings to mind that episode of Power Rangers Ninja Steel, where several of those Rangers were turned evil, and they were all more interesting and badass characters that way. Kit had nodded off next to his dad. He paces the room a little, clearly feeling guilt about what he experienced in his dream. He holds up his hand and sees that he's shaking, asking what's happening to him. At the bookstore, Trent has one of his most useful moments of the entire series, advising Maya to delete all of her Kamen Rider files. She doesn't see the point, since the government already has those files, but wisely, Trent points out that if they can't find that information on her hard drive, they can claim that Michelle made the whole thing up. Of course, data recovery is a thing, especially for the government, but this is exactly what a computer geek would be advising in this situation. Then Lacey steps in, but don't groan. She's not really bad here. She takes this opportunity to try to sway Maya away from all of this, saying that, hey, maybe it's a better idea to just let the government handle this. Maya questions that she didn't think Lacey believed any of this was happening in the first place, and I was ready to call that out because, Lacey has seen a Kamen Rider. However, point to the show. Lacey, after seeing the rider, went away to think about things. She ran into Michelle and the two of them had that talk and etc., etc. Maya does not know that Lacey knows that this is all real. Lacey very deftly says that sure, she still thinks this is all fake, but seeing as her fake stuff is getting her into very real trouble now, maybe it's time to give all of this a rest. Seeing as Trent's advice fits the bill, whether she listens to Lacey and gives all of this up or presses on to be safe from the government, Maya deletes all her files. However, we see that this really doesn't matter as the government agents are running surveillance on the bookstore. One, this means that they definitely wouldn't even care about needing to get a warrant to arrest Kit, so they're wasting time there. And two, the camera is in a somewhat weird and incredibly obvious place, in a plush cat sitting up on a high shelf, and the cat has this tentacle eye coming out of its head, and the eye is a hidden camera. However, Michelle is still proving wildly ineffective as a federal agent. She can't find Kit and says he's gotta pop up somewhere. So I wasn't really going to mention this to save some time and because I didn't think the show would confirm it and it really wasn't all that important. But then the show did confirm it, so I'm going to mention it anyway. Kit is walking around an area that has these kind of yellowish trees, and I was like, that kind of looks like Gramercy Park. It would be kind of cool if I was able to start identifying filming locations, or at least locations in the story, based on how they looked.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
Sure enough, Kit walks directly up to the Gramercy Park sign. All right, flashbacks about Chris and how he was willing to sacrifice himself for Ventara in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, good guess. Wrong, though.
Okay, show. Well played. Another point to you. The flashback isn't about Chris at all. It is about Kit and his dad. They were tossing the ball around in the park when an upset Kit asks his dad for some advice. A friend of his wants him to plant his phone inside a bully's locker so they can then claim that the bully stole the phone and get him expelled. The bully isn't just beating up Kit's friend, but other kids at the school as well, with a standing threat that it's just gonna keep on happening. And of course, the adults at the school are doing absolutely nothing about it because that is a sadly accurate depiction of the American educational system. His dad walks him through the hypotheticals of the situation. If he does this, the bully could be not just expelled, but arrested. And then would Kit ever be able to look at his friend the same way again, knowing that he had to hurt someone to help him?
That's right.
The ends never justify the means, he tells his son, which, by the way, is just factually untrue. Just being incredibly simplistic about it, if I want some McDonald's, and the means of me getting that McDonald's are driving to McDonald's, then the ends, getting the McDonald's, justify the means, driving to McDonald's.
Moving right along.
Kit smiles, seemingly having made his decision, and starts to walk away. And who should pop up behind him but Danny? He could have just stabbed him in the back for as aware as Kit was of his presence, but of course this is a kid's show, so Danny just tackles him into a bus stop sign reflective enough to send the two of them to Ventara. And okay, I know these reviews are long enough as it is, but I have been saving up a rant about this, and I can't hold it back any longer. Why aren't reflective surfaces between Earth and Ventara directly connected to each other? Sometimes they are, but this time Danny tackles Kit through a bus stop sign at Gramercy Park, and the two of them end up in a parking lot on top of a building. If the mirrors are portals between the two worlds, that's not how they should work. They should have ended up right back in the park. Unless this is a Chrono Trigger-like situation where that exact spot, the park, is somehow at the top of an elevated building in Ventara, I'm not buying it. Yeah, I know, match the Ryuki footage, but start the scene where the scene needs to be. If you need to be in a parking lot for the Ryuki footage, start the scene in a parking lot. Kit has a motorcycle. Everyone in this show has a motorcycle. Grace probably owns a motorcycle. It's not hard to justify being in a parking lot.
Get on with it!
You listen to me, you deific sack of sanctimonious sausage. You are gonna hush that Monty Python popularized mouth up right now, or I swear on my honor as a Power Ranger, I'm gonna get the nurse that you annoyed in that movie to shove a syringe of shut the heck up directly up your... Sorry. Where was I? Oh, right. Danny declares that this is their final battle, something that Kit is all too eager for. The two of them get a rather episode-padding transformation sequence, but it's still neat to see. More weird than that is we cut over to Len and Case, and they hear not the standard alert shimmers, but a dull, low tone. And somehow they know that this means that Kit has transformed into Dragon Knight. We then cut even further away from the fight to Xaviax and JTC. I love this scene though, and you know why, say it with me. Xaviax! They're watching Dragon Knight and Axe fight, and Xaviax is glowering menacingly at the screen, while JTC has this kind of oopsie doodles look on his face. JTC simply says, I'll take care of it, and heads to Ventara, and Xaviax just turns away from the screen, satisfied with this conclusion. Back at the fight, where two trucks have had their Ford logos taped over with black tape, we get a really nice fight banter line. Axe says, no little birdie's here to save you this time. Dragon Knight replies, ha! She didn't save me, she saved you.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
Requisite bike porn as Len and Case head into the parking garage, and the fact that they're in the parking garage and we see the particular kinds of cars and everything reflect that this really is an original fight scene, so again, that's nice to see. Though it does make me question if this is an original fight scene, why they couldn't have just done it in the park and matched their own footage. Maybe there is some Ryuki footage in this, I'm not sure. When they see that Dragon Knight is fighting Axe, Case stops Len and says they really need to let Kit win this fight on his own. Len seems unsure, but the two of them step behind a pillar to hide and observe. Kit proves worthy of this at first, really taking the offensive, but then Axe gets his claws out and turns the tide of the fight. He pulls his final vent card, but then Strike shows up. Axe tells Strike to get out of here, leave this alone, Kit is his, but Strike shoves him aside and then kicks him halfway clear across the parking lot, a good 50 feet or so away. Seeing Strike has entered the scene, Len and Case run in to intervene, but it's clear that they're too far away to do anything. Strike activates his final vent, launched into the air as Kit looks up at him helpless, and Strike kicks directly into Kamen Rider Axe, who takes the full brunt of the blow. Danny doesn't have any last words. I really would have thought something like, "We'll be together now, brother," would have been nice, as he is vented. Strike walks away, but Dragon Knight chases him down and asks him why he vented Axe. Strike just says that he disobeyed orders. Then, seeing Len and Case behind Kit, He teasingly asks Kit if he enjoyed that chat he had with his dad today before going back to Earth. Len and Case run up to Kit, and Len asks if Kit has anything that he would like to share. Back at the bookstore, Trent is asking Maya question after question to make sure that she really has deleted everything. Now, of course, they don't get into, deep scrub data deletion, reformatting the hard drive to make sure there's no data on it whatsoever, tossing the laptop and its hard drive into a fire. But Maya insists that she has deleted everything. 5 years of networking, 5 years of her life, gone just like that. Trent then launches into a rant about being traded at Area 51 to aliens in exchange for technology that really kind of steps back the progress his character made this time. Maya says that she can't believe that Michelle would sell her out like this. The two of them used to be friends. That must have been before the show. Michelle was introduced as annoying and semi-antagonistic right from the beginning. That breaks the resolve of Lacey, who's already been feeling very guilty about all the harm she's done, and she finally admits that it wasn't Michelle. It was her. Of course, Michelle told her to do it and gave her the thumb drive to do it with, so it was still kind of Michelle, but anyway. Over at Kit's apartment, and seriously, the establishing shot with the giant staircases makes me laugh every single time. That is not an apartment complex. Kit insists that he's not working with Xaviax, and Len believes that, but would like an explanation. Kit explains about Xaviax's manipulation of him and the deal that he was offered. But, he says, remembering the lesson that his dad taught him made him realize that if he saved his dad by taking Xaviax's deal, he'd never be able to look at his dad in the face again. He declares that he is ready to go after Xaviax and to be a real Kamen Rider. And Case, to this point his biggest doubter, says that she thinks he is. We now have a new trio of riders fighting for Ventara and Earth. Back with Xaviax, JTC returns, telling him that Kit didn't take the bait and turn on Wing Knight. In fact, he even suggests that they really should have just let Axe vent Dragon Knight so their forces would be closer to even. Xaviax feigns shock and surprise, declaring Kit to be heartless for not wanting to take care of his dad. Then trying to remember which side his heart is supposed to be on in a funny moment before JTC reminds him that he doesn't have a heart. Of course, how an organic creature survives without a cardiac organ really doesn't make sense to me, but maybe he's some kind of plant-based life form. Anyway, the rules of the game have now changed completely. Venting Dragon Knight is officially on the table, and he has something to help JTC do that. He reveals the very rider that Len and Case were worried about finding. The brown and gold, Phoenix-themed Kamen Rider Wrath. Let's read the cards! Episode 25, Dropping the Axe. Pros, a great episode for plot threads coming together. Nice to see Kit grow into his own, and Xaviax still owning the room. Cons, the venting the episode is named for is kind of an afterthought. The lengthy dream at the start is another tease, and the Maya, Michelle, Lacey stuff is a distracting aside. Much, much better. Dropping the Axe gets 4.5 cards out of 5. This is another one of those episodes that ends an arc with multiple threads converging. Kit's doubts of himself over Siren, Danny's obsession with Kit, heck, even Xaviax trying to manipulate Kit from the very beginning is kind of a mega arc, and all of that ties together right here. The show is just very well written that way. Weaving these plot threads through various episodes, and then it all comes to a head in one of these, and it's just very satisfying. In that same scene where I properly guessed that Kit was in Gramercy Park, I kind of realized something else. As I saw him walking on the sidewalk all by himself, I kind of thought that it was nice for the show to be focusing on its title character again. The story kind of went off in some other directions while Kit had some growing up to do. But, hearkening back to the previous Pro, that arc has ended and Kit has kind of grown up and cast his doubts aside. It's really nice to see a show with a main character that's able to grow and change in that way. And I promise I'll keep this one short, but Xaviax just owns every single scene he's in. It's that simple. He demands attention, exudes gravitas, and...
So I'm just gonna gush right now, okay? I'm just gonna gush.
Dropping the axe clearly implied that Danny was going to be dealt with, but for all the buildup to his venting, the execution, unintended pun, really wasn't even the focus of the episode. I kind of get where they were going with this. Kit makes his choice, learns his lesson, and then faces a big test. But in this episode, Danny just kind of literally shows up and declares this to be their final battle. I just wanted a little bit more to it. Maybe sprinkle him into the episode, tracking Kit from the rooftops, avoiding JTC looking for him, like they did with Torque. Stuff like that. The Dream. So it feels like they started the last episode with the dream and they wanted to start this episode with a dream, but will the audience fall for that trick twice in a row? Well, I bet you they will if we stretch that dream around the opening titles. We'd never hold a dream out that long, right? There was some drama in it because it seemed like Kit had made his choice to betray Wing Knight, but I think anybody who's seen more than one or two of these shows suspected that it was a dream already. And I am going to say this about the final con. Without going into deep spoilers, the whole government thing is the next arc of this story. But until we reach that point, it's just an annoying aside. We go from Kit worrying about his dad and these disturbing dreams that he's been having, to Maya worrying about the government. Sure, it's a legitimate concern, but there's no consequence to it. In this episode, we cut back to her like 3 times, and it's always the same thing, just worrying about the government.
I'm the government, I'm the government, I'm the reason nothing works.
But overall, great drama, great character growth, great episode. Can Dragon Knight go from strength to strength? Let's take a peek at the 26th episode of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, Kamen Rider Wrath. Wrath, Xaviax's more direct approach, attacks Len and Case along the strike. While visiting his dad in the hospital, Kit is taken by mysterious government agents. That is going to do it for another Kamen Rider Dragon Knight episode review. Thank you, heroes, so much as always for watching. Make sure to click that thumbs up button right down below to let me know that you enjoyed this video. While you're down there, also leave me a comment. What did you think about this episode? What did you think of my review of it? I'd really love it if you'd also check me out on my other channel, Orange Ranger Plays, where I'm currently playing Chrono Trigger. You might remember that I made kind of a Chrono Trigger reference in the previous review. That's where that came from. I'd love it if you check that out. Also check me out on Patreon, Coffee, Teespring, all the stuff that the bots talk about back there. I very much appreciate you watching. Once again, I'll say I appreciate your patience as I try to get all of my videos on a more regular schedule so you know when to expect them. Until next time, heroes, may the power of the cards protect you. And after this point, the fight is an absolute mismatch. If I want some McDonald's, the means of getting it, driving to McDonald's, he really could have just stabbed him in the back for his Let's take a peek at the